brings us to our final panel discussion, Lifespring, a new approach to memory care and adult day services at Cross Keys Village. And so behind us, you will see kind of just a scroll of pictures. This project was recently completed, and they're newly implementing the services there at this facility. And we have today with us Jay Rohrbach, who's the COO at Cross Keys Village, Jennifer Holcomb, who is Chief Clinical Integration Officer at Cross Keys Village, Melissa DeStout, who's Associate Principal at Perkins Eastman. And I'd just like to welcome everybody for this final panel. Lifespring represents a transformative approach to memory care and senior support designed to not only enhance the quality of life for residents, families, but also the greater community. We'll discuss the vision behind Lifespring, its design, and operational impact, and the lessons learned that could benefit some of your other communities. Before we dive into the discussion, I'm going to let each of the panelists introduce themselves, what they do at their respective organizations, and how they were involved in the project. So start with Jay.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I am Jay Rohrbach. I'm the COO, and for this project, I oversee project management, project development at Cross Keys, so that was my primary focus with this one.
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Holcomb, and I'm the Chief Clinical Integration Officer at Cross Keys Village. My role in the project was to serve as the memory care expert and provide guidance on how the building is designed so we can make sure to have appropriate flow and interactions throughout the day.
Hello everyone, my name is Melissa DeStout. I'm an architect and one of our senior living practice area leaders at Perkins Eastman. We work across the country to work with providers like yourselves in Cross Keys Village. We do planning, architecture, interior design, and so my role on this project was to really manage not only this project, but some other work that we've been doing with Cross Keys Village to really implement this vision that they have.
Thank you. All right, so we'll talk about vision since that was mentioned here. Seems like a pretty unique facility, unique application. Jen, what inspired Cross Keys Village to develop Lifespring?
So the inspiration actually came from having an adult day program on our campus, which was pre-pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, we decided it wasn't a good use of resources to keep that program open and operating. So we knew what running an adult day program was and what it looked like, but we wanted to create a space where individuals with neurocognitive disorders could come into a space, feel safe, feel secure, feel at home, and have the appropriate level of engagement that they wouldn't be receiving outside of their own home. So the vision was to create this really great space where we could meet the needs of people with neurocognitive disorders in a day program setting.
Right. And one of you mentioned how the Lifespring name came to be. Do you want to share that story?
No, it's your story. It's your story.
I don't know if I remember the whole story, but I'll try. So with the building name, we really wanted it to be attractive and energizing, and again, wanted to bring the building to life. So the people who come into the program are really energized by the program, but also are tired at the end of the day when they go home for with their loved ones. So it's really the name came about based on this idea of life, and we wanted people to kind of bounce back and spring back into life. So that's kind of how that name came about.
Great, thank you. I'm picturing Tigger.
Yes.
So designing for dignity and well-being. I think Melissa, memory care has certainly evolved significantly. How did you and your team incorporate the latest research and best practices for memory care, and what sort of advice would you have for these types of facilities?
So it was 30 years ago now that we actually established as Perkins Eastman our Pittsburgh studio, and that was related to a memory care project that we were doing with a client in Pittsburgh, where what was really the most innovative thing at the time was creating small households for memory care residents to live in. And since then, a lot has changed. That has not. That kind of idea of a smaller, more residential living setting has been embraced by many, really pushed forward by Bill Thomas and others when we talk about the small house, greenhouse movement. But when we're talking about memory care, we're really even going beyond that. So we have organizations like Hogewey in the Netherlands that's talking about dementia villages and really looking at that smaller setting but creating community. And now as we see that even more folks are living with dementia and those numbers only continue to rise, that we need to be thinking a little bit more broadly in the community. And so that's where a project like Lifespring is so important, is because it goes beyond serving people in a residential care setting and looks to engage with those living in the community and also caring for the caregivers. So from a design perspective, we kind of had a unique challenge here where we were designing a building with a dual purpose. It's both being a resource to the community, to those living with dementia, but also those caring for them and creating a place for that support to happen. And it's doing what Jen was talking about and really activating and inspiring folks and bringing some life back during that day programming. So some of the things that we really talked about there is having a distinction, so being very clear about what was what, where you were going to. So if you can see, I'm not sure all the images that are falling up behind me, but there are two entrances to this building. One really specific to that resource center that's a little bit more, a little bit larger, a little bit kind of more community focused, and then one that's a little bit smaller scaled, and it's intended to feel more welcoming and more personable. We really thought about what's the experience of someone coming here for the day, and as encouraged by Jen and her team, really thinking through every moment of that experience. And so making sure that we built in spaces for transition, so that there's a foyer that you'll see as you come in that you can kind of have a chance to adjust before jumping right into that programming, to all of that life and activity. And in that space, you can kind of see what's there, decide, okay, now I'm ready. But it also, from the other end, acts as a buffer, because we all know in memory care environments, there can be a lot of distraction when you see the coming and going. And particularly in an adult day program, there can be arrivals and departures that happen throughout the day. So it's not just a more continuous use of that space. So having that transitional space there allows for kind of multi benefits to the program, both to the residents who are coming, but also to those who are in that space. It's just one example. Another is really, we wanted to bridge off of this idea of Lifespring. And so the interior design of the building, every design element was really focused on bringing that idea of life, that kind of reinvigorating with some of the bold colors that are in there, the blues, things like that, and the artwork that the organization selected. It was all really focused and intentional around bringing this idea to life. Part of that was this connection to nature with lots of windows, natural light, and the views to the outdoors that the day program space is really focused on. So there's a challenge on this site in that we're right adjacent to a highway, pretty main road. And so the way that we organized the building was that the administrative spaces, some of the support spaces were along that. So there's still lots of windows, lots of natural light, but the resident facing or the participant facing spaces were really geared toward a more natural environment.
Great, thank you. There was
Yeah.
sensory gardens. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yep, so as Melissa was alluding to, the outside is extremely important. As we went through the design process, the windows were a big part of that. To the point where it was like, there goes the glazing budget. But it was large windows, lots of natural light. But then how do you get the resident or the participants to engage with the outside? So we can look out, we can see it, but then we can also go out into a nice sized secure courtyard that is multi-use, pavilions, various seating options. We have a grill out there, planters, all kinds of things like that. That way people can go out, use it as an activity space, an area to go out and relax, just a lot of engagement in a lot of different ways. So that was very, very important to the program. So now that the weather's going to break, we're going to be using that a lot.
And Jen, you're in there every day with visitors?
So I don't know about every day, but
Not every day, but you get to see them interact with the space. Can you talk a little bit about how they're responding and what you're seeing?
Yeah, so the best part about the project is when we start using the program. So it took us a little while to get licensed, just hurdles to go through there, but the participants who are coming to the program, they just walk right in. There's no hesitation because it's a very attractive space. It's nice and bright, vibrant. The team that works in that space is very inviting and very warm as well. So the families really appreciate having a program that's specific to memory care. We're the only secured program in our area, so it's a huge benefit to families as well. We also provide a bathing service in the day program. That's something that's an additional cost, but we opted to install a whirlpool tub in the space so we can provide that experience, and it's one less thing the caregiver at home needs to do when they get off from a full day of work. So the comments and the feedback from families and participants has been excellent, which is what we were aiming for.
And you mentioned 20 people have signed up. Is that talk about the metrics a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. So right now we opened early March. So right now we have about 20 people enrolled in the program, and that varies from day to day, how many we have. Some are full day, some are half day. But we have over 60 people on the interest list. We started an interest list back in the summer because people were asking about this program. People who used the old program, wanting to see what we were doing with this new building and the new program. So the hiccup right now is doctors' offices. Trying to get paperwork done is like, it's awful. So that's our hurdle, just trying to get through that process and helping families navigate that. But we are continuing to see on a weekly basis increasing numbers of usage.
Great. This is spur of the moment, but you had to kind of shut down your adult daycare because of COVID.
Yes.
Was there things you learned from COVID that went into the design of this facility that maybe should we have another type of incidence, like is going to allow you to have better flexibility or better use of the space? It's just something that...
Yeah, so from my perspective, COVID really tore apart relationships. So one of the things that I was hoping, and we do see in this program, is bringing back a sense of community and engagement. The pandemic killed a lot of people because of the withdrawal and not having socialization. And most of the people who attended our day program prior to the pandemic passed away during the pandemic. For me, it was bringing back that sense of community and relationship and friendship. One of the things that we see in relationships with neurocognitive disorders are friends of that family member of the person living with the disease. They tend to withdraw, and people lose their friendships they've had for decades. So the space that was created has helped to set people up for developing new relationships and having that sense of community. So for me, it was all about the flow, and I think we did learn too, maybe some extra space in the program. The former building was very, very tight with walkers and wheelchairs and all the adaptive equipment. It was really tight, so we were afforded the opportunity to have more square footage, which I know is Jay's dream. But that was intentional as well, just because we did experience some challenges in the former program.
Great.
I can add a little bit to that. From the building and constructability side, we did factor those kinds of questions in. So everything from HVAC more circulation space, like Jen was saying. I'll touch on the timing and the balancing of that here in a little bit. But then also, what kind of materials are we using there? How cleanable are they? I'm sure you all have the issues where your housekeeping keeps cleaning the same area over and over with some of the stronger chemicals we're using, and we're refinishing or having to refinish now and do some other things like that. So we took a lot of that infection control, how do we handle that piece into account when we're designing the building.
Gotcha.
Get back to Jen.
So talking about the impact, what impact this has, Jennifer, in addition to the Adult Day Services Program, what role does it play in supporting the seniors, and we touched on it, their caregivers ultimately, who can have a break and drop them off for the day?
Yeah, so Lifespring is open for 11 to 12 hours a day. So we open at 7 a, close at 6 p. We open and close at those hours because it provides family members who are still working the opportunity to drop their loved one off on the way to work and then pick them up on the way home from work. Right now, there's about 7 million people in the United States living with some form of neurocognitive disorder, and about 59% of caregivers report that they're either very stressed or stressed because of being a caregiver. So our goal with this program is to provide some relief and some respite opportunity, so family members can trust that they're in really good hands while they're away, while they're working or running other errands. So, and with aging in place, that's the latest and greatest. With aging in place comes more stress. Families trying to keep their loved one at home, and as the disease progresses, there's more challenges to navigate. So the day program provides some relief from some of those things.
Great. And Jay, from an operational standpoint, you have to make sure this works, not only up front, design, the costs, the programs. Could you talk a little bit about the challenges and the opportunities?
Sure. So the biggest challenge was how do we pay for this? The goal was to finance this project 100% through donations. So it wasn't coming out of our normal capital budget. So that was challenge number one. Our foundation was on board right away. We were able to do some testing and research, set some goals. They put together a committee to help fundraise and steer and things like that. So we came right out of the gate with a good budget, and didn't see any problems with that. And then we decided to design the building in probably one of the most volatile construction markets we've seen in a long time. So we went from concept one, which was 8,000 square feet, and said, whoa, this is a little more than we thought we could fundraise. But we went back to the foundation folks and said, what do you think we can do? By that point, we were seeing so much momentum from the greater community that, yes, we can increase this budget, but not to where concept A was. So we went back to the board with the Perkins team and our teams, and came up with the design you see up there now. So it ended up at about 6,000 square feet. And part of that discussion was going back to circulation. How much do we need? What do we do? What's allowable? What feels comfortable? And took all that into account. So from there, and I'll say the other piece of that was the construction market. Then we went into civil, talking with civil, and then we find the site isn't quite as good as we thought it was hoping to be. So then we went back to the drawing board, had to adjust things again, things like that. So that was probably the first challenge. We had some challenges and some opportunities with how do we feed the folks here. So we do offer breakfast and lunch and of course snacks, but I'm sure you all know how much a commercial kitchen costs. So how do we keep that cost to a minimum? So we've found a way that we can have one of our existing kitchens on campus support the dining program here at Lifespring. So we'll have to see how it goes, but I'm feeling confident on that. So I think the last thing I'll touch on is while our current Brookside Memory Care is a really great program. It contributes positively to the bottom line. This project is mission driven. We knew that going in. It's not going to produce a positive bottom line. That was part of the balancing act of, okay, how much can we incur here to still make this reasonable? So those were all things. That was everything down to the number of participants, because there's a huge need, but there's only so much space. So all that was taken into account, and I think we came to a really good conclusion there. But the program is not just for Cross Keys Village, it is for the greater community. In fact, we have probably a greater interest from the greater community than what we actually have on campus.
Okay, great. Let's talk about the construction process, collaboration. I know our team worked closely with Perkins Eastman, especially when the budget and the cost shot up to kind of realign goals. Melissa, can you talk about what that process was like?
Yeah, so given what Jay said about the volatility of the market at the time that we were designing this, we could not have gotten to a solution without working really closely with the team from Maori. They were part of early design conversations. Every design presentation that we had with the Cross Keys team, we were wrapping in our team from Maori, so that both there was some opportunity for feedback and suggestions, but also buy-in as far as understanding that we were all on the same page with the key goals for the project and why we were doing this. That first round of the building, that 8,000 square foot version, was the ideal, and it was really great as far as separation of entrances and different program settings for different stages of dementia. What we found was that when push came to shove, we could really do a lot of this in a more efficient way. And so in working with the Maori team, we found what's the biggest savings that we can get to, and it's from a really simplified footprint. So you can see that the plan that you see up there, it doesn't look like anything special, it's just a rectangle, but that's really the most efficient from an envelope, from a building materials perspective that we can get. The second thing that we did was really to pay attention to circulation and to not waste any of that interior square footage on corridors and things like that. So really simplifying how this building laid out and using every space to its fullest to make that work. Throughout the design process, Maori managed our MEP team. So we went design build on MEP in order to, again, really be able to be flexible and adapt and make sure that we were getting the best system, to Jay's point, as far as planning for the future, but also the most cost-effective system when it comes to the purchase of it and the installation as well. And then we continued to work throughout the process on evaluating substitutions, considering other materials, all the way through construction. But the key to it was that the whole team had been on board through design, so that, again, that kind of backbone of what's the purpose of this building, what's most important, that carried through and helped us all to evaluate and all to kind of come to an understanding and feel good about what that final outcome was.
Jennifer, has there been any design or construction decisions that stand out for you?
Yeah, look on the screen. That is actually one of the team's favorite spaces. So that's the team workroom. But what's really cool about it is it's a one-way window, so the team can see out and monitor the participants in the space, but the participants can't see them. So that we utilize in another program of ours, and we just had to have it in Lifespring as well. But that's one of the features for the team. I would say for the participants, it's the den. And I don't know if that picture scrolled through yet, but the den is this beautiful space where we have a large screen IN2L, if you're familiar with It's Never Too Late. And that's where a lot of the activity takes place. When you walk in there, it's fun. It's just a lot of fun. So the space has allowed us to create life and energize those participants while they're there in the program. I'll also add the bar. They're not that kind of bar, but but a bar. There's a nice, beautiful bar in the common space where in the morning when folks are dropped off, it's sitting at the bar. We're talking to your friends, having coffee. So it's another really cool addition to that space that has helped to foster connections.
Great. And lessons learned. So now that it's up and running, Jay, you talked about kind of balancing the needs and the financial demands. This isn't necessarily a revenue generator for you guys, but talk about what you learned with having this project now operational.
Making sure your stakeholders are at the table as early as possible, and that's everybody from foundation and fundraising all the way down to the architects, of course, the contractor, our teams. It wasn't just Jen and I. We had our frontliner community life team, our nursing staff, all those people. We got together to the table to figure out, okay, what works, what makes the most sense, what will create the best flow, what looks, the aesthetics of the inside, what makes it inviting. We had to get all those people together, and then when we had to reduce the size, again, how small can we go with this thing versus one thing we didn't touch in here, we have beautiful ceilings in here. We have nice vaulted wood-looking ceilings on one side, nice tray, and nice beautiful lighting on the other. We went so far in VE, it's like, okay, what if that is just a hard ceiling whole way across? And we looked at some of that and went, can't do it. It just took way too much from the program. So all those pieces had to be kind of put together like a big puzzle as we went, and that was just a constant moving process the whole way through until when we started construction. And then as we got into construction, Mallory did a nice job of coming back and saying, hey, we know we specified and put the submittals in, they were approved for this, but we found this over here, and we might be able to save you some tens of thousands of dollars on some of it. It was like, let's go. So we were able to be flexible as we went through that process, and we're able to substitute some construction materials that we hadn't thought of beforehand that really came out to our benefit later on.
And Jennifer, can you talk about the importance of your input, having the programming and that vision for what this can be integrated into the process?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate to work with a really great group of people. And in my background, my career over the past 19 years has been an expertise in memory care. So when we design these spaces, we look at everything through the eye of someone living with the disease. So like if you look down at this carpet, for example, this is a nightmare for memory care. Because to someone who has changes to their vision, it could look like a snake or something swirling on the carpet. So it becomes really important to have someone at the table who can answer those questions and really stop the team to say, hey, the lighting needs to be better in this space, or we need to have more room between the tables because of adaptive equipment. So I'm fortunate, again, I work with a great team of people and they're very receptive. And we all are educated in our community on memory care. It's not just the nursing team members, every single person on campus has that education. So I think that's another critical piece to this is that you understand, you research, because one thing can really change the whole dynamic of the day for the person who's coming to the program.
And Melissa, you mentioned you have a post-occupancy evaluation 12 months after this project is up and running. I think all buildings should have that. It's like how we live in these and operate these facilities can slightly differ from how we designed them and built them. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, so at Perkins Eastman, we're lucky to have a dedicated design research department. And so we facilitate these post-occupancy evaluations because we really do need to continue to learn and to evolve and to push the industry forward, and that's one of the ways that we do it. What we find is that usually after a year of a building being open, the staff, the participants, everyone has adapted that building and is using it often in a different way than we even had imagined when we started the project, and there's always something that we can learn from that. why was it adapted? How was this adapted? And how can that inform how we think about these things in the future, whether it's for a future adult day building, for a future residential setting, whatever it is, there's always something to learn from that process. And here, I think I'm very excited about is to see how the spaces are used flexibly, because that's something that we really, as we condense that footprint, we were kind of pushed into a little bit. But I think eventually we all embrace thinking about how can this more condensed building still fulfill this community need. And how can we adapt to really use these spaces to create opportunities even in off hours, so that the resource center there's a door, just as simple as adding a door between the resource room, that gathering room, and the day program space, so that an after hours event could have access to that serving kitchen, that bar that Jen talked about. So little moves like that, not big costs, adding a single door. I'm really excited to see how this building is used over the next year before we come back to look at it again.
Great. And I understand you offer classes for caregivers just about how they can probably learn about the best way to take care of these folks. Can you talk a little bit about that, when they're offered?
So part of the project was to have the day program, but the other piece was a memory care resource center. So we have a teaching space that we have, as well as some office spaces for the memory care team. And through those spaces, we provide a number of support groups. I think we're up to about 9 different support groups for those living on our campus, as well as in the greater community. And those groups, those connections that the team makes with people in the greater community is a feeder into our other programs, which has been seen over the last, I'd say, 10 years. So it's been really good to help create relationships with people in the greater community, provide them with education and support and resources so they can continue to keep their loved one at home.
Great. Thank you. And in closing, I mean, Jay, do you want to maybe talk about what you guys are working on coming up next after this project? And
Sure. Actually, if I could go back, I don't want to break the flow, but one of the
That's fine.
points I missed, I'm sorry. Through the design, we really looked at acoustics and lighting. And it's so easy to kind of look over, okay, we add a few lights and throw a little extra insulation in some of the walls, and then you just kind of pray. We are along a busy highway, state highway. Sound was a concern, but then when you get 20 plus 30 people in a room, it can get very loud very fast. So we all kind of wince sometimes when you get that quote to do a sound study or an acoustic study or a light study, but it's money well spent because it's really expensive to retrofit later on. So anyways, I wanted to just touch on that because that's a near and dear to my heart. But anyways, Cross Keys, I'll say we're in growth mode, and I don't want to share too many of our trade secrets, but we are currently underway on what we call Bridgewater Landing. It's 59 new independent living units, a combination of singles and duplexes, along with a clubhouse. And then a really exciting feature on the site is we're in quarry country for bricks, and the all-wine brick plant is what used to be the all-wine brick plant is right across the street. So we were blessed with a clay quarry, a clay pit on the back 40 of this where we're developing this. What do you do with a clay pit? Well, we're going to redevelop that into about a 3.5, almost 4 acre water feature to go with that. So there's the Bridgewater Landing part. So, but we're in the process of developing and designing several other projects, but to be announced.
great. Well, thank you very much. That's all we have for the panel. Are there any questions?